Welcome to the Art of Adventure. This is episode 205 with Emily Utter. The Art of Adventure is the podcast that helps you travel the world, run your business, and embark on an epic quest. I'm your host, lead explorer, and guide, Derek Loudermilk, and you can find the show notes at derekloudermilk.com. Emily Utter is back for her second appearance on the podcast by popular demand, both from you, the listener, and from Emily. Emily couldn't wait to come back on the show. And it's been a couple of years since she was on the show. And in that time, she has been my personal business coach. And last year, she helped me grow my business by over 300%. And she's helped, I'm going to say, hundreds of people hit six figures in their business, and many of them multiple six figures. So she's been doing this for a while. She gets great results for people, and I'm totally behind what she's up to. And so I thought I'd use today's interview to dig deeper into how she's able to do what she does, to train so many people to be successful at business. So if you implement some of the ideas from this podcast, you will make money. So we're going to talk about things like how to use personal power and really live your brand, and what you should be talking about when you're doing Facebook Lives and talking about yourself online. We're going to talk about how to connect the dots for people when you're doing a sales call or when you're coaching them, so it's very clear how they see the value in what you are telling them. There's an interesting concept that we talk about, which is that our business and the way our clients are showing up, and if we're having any trouble in our business or with clients, that is a reflection of something going on in us. And both Emily and I have this thing where we show up and go 90% of the way or 95% of the way, and we don't finish, like even doing the dishes or something silly like that. And it shows up in our business where we leave one little detail undone. We're going to talk about how Emily learned to not be afraid to tell the truth to her clients about the patterns she sees that they're following, and how clients really want someone to tell them the truth, and they keep coming back and paying her to tell them the truth. And we're going to talk specifics about how Emily manages her team, how she manages launches, how many hours a week she works. Sometimes it's just 2 hours a week. I could go on, but I'll just let you listen to the episode. There's so much good stuff in here. So without further ado, here is Emily Utter. Welcome back to the Art of Adventure, and I am here today with Emily Utter. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me back. I'm stoked.
Yeah, it's really cool because the last time you were on the show was nearly a couple of years ago, and that was much closer to when we first met in Bali. I'm back in Bali, and since then you've been to Bali a couple of times, and also we've spent more than a year working together with you as my coach. So we know each other a lot better now.
Totally. It's great.
And Emily, I've noticed recently, well, in general, you appear on Facebook Live and you are sort of using that as marketing, but you're also sort of using that as your platform for the things that you care about. So I'm curious how you mix this sort of personal social media with marketing for your business, with talking about things that you're passionate about.
Oh, that's such a good question. Honestly, I would say at this point, my business and everything that I do is such a big part of my life that it's almost like there's not a separation. And I don't mean, I'm working 24/7 in my business. That's not what I mean, but I care so much about my work, and it really is my mission. And I basically just always talk about whatever I'm excited about. So whether it's making a self-deprecating joke about the fact that I don't know how to parallel park, which is absurd, but it's true. Or talking about food or ranting about something around business or sharing a story to me. I don't really think about it from a strategic perspective. What I have, well, the only strategy really is share stuff when I'm excited about it. And, Facebook Live when I'm actually on fire about something. Every single time that I do that, there's great reaction, there's great engagement. If I ever do something out of a should, like, oh, it's been a while since I've done a live, I guess I should do one, it's like crickets. And it's so funny. And I've kind of tested this. So I don't know if I have the best answer for your question, but to me, I don't feel the need to separate it, because actually I would say more and more what people really want, and the reason why people would choose to work with you or choose to work with me, is because there's something about our personality that's really attractive to them. So even me sharing about being kind of a ding dong around like not knowing how to park, for example, it's just showing people more of who I am. And that's going to just naturally kind of attract clients to me who vibe with me, and, repel people who don't vibe with me at all, or who don't like the fact that I swear, or whatever, they think I'm unprofessional, whatever it is that they don't like about me, it's going to repel those people. And then the other people think that I'm hilarious and love my weird stuff that I post. So yeah, there was something else I wanted to say that just escaped my brain for a second here.
I also wanted to ask.
So I just thought of one thing, Derek, actually.
Yes.
Something that we've been playing with this year that's been really fun is, I've always been doing webinars over the past several years, but we now co-live stream those on Facebook. And that's definitely brought in a new type of client for me, because, I've always had friends that really did fit my ideal client profile, but I think a lot of my friends felt awkward about hiring me. But since I started putting more on Facebook, especially, when I was selling Sales Power, for example, I was streaming all of those webinars on Facebook. And crazy, Derek, is in my most recent launch, well, maybe it's not so crazy, almost everybody who bought was somebody that I consider a friend or somebody that I know.
Wow,
and
that's
Facebook
awesome.
definitely had something to do with that. Yeah. So it was such a huge indicator to me to, definitely keep doing more of that. And that was working. Like sharing more of myself on Facebook was definitely working for me.
Yeah. And Emily, you have, amongst all of your branding, you have a very clear and specific business. I help coaches and healers. And even through these sort of personal things that you're excited about, it seems to be on brand. And I'm wondering how, we're all people that have sort of broad interests. How do you keep your business and branding so focused, given that you're interested in a bunch of things?
Honestly, the best way to be on brand is literally be yourself constantly. So to me, there's never a conflict, regardless of what it is. It's just like the reason why I think people see me as so on brand is because I've just, and this has been a process for sure over the past several years, just given myself more and more and more and more permission to just freaking be me. And that's all it is to live your brand, is to literally just be yourself. So I would say in the beginning of my business, I felt like I had to be this more kind of buttoned up, professional, maybe even uber spiritual, in a very like, I'm so chill kind of way. And it's hard to do that. It's actually really exhausting to be somebody other than who we are. So that's how for me, the brand consistency is just literally me giving myself permission to be who I am, unapologetically, really.
What did that process look like for you to portray your true self more?
Yeah, well, I had to let go of the fear around not doing that. So, and I definitely had some experiences, and I've really, for the most part, minus the maybe one or two complete crazies here and there, I've really loved all of my clients. So when I say that not all of them were really the perfect fit in the past, it's not that I didn't enjoy my work and appreciate them and think that they have amazing businesses that are so important. None of that changes, and I have such respect for them. But what I realized was that I just felt different with my clients, the more that I was giving myself permission to be me, to have a Burning Man profile photo, things like that, I just started to attract more people that I didn't feel like I had to apologize for who I am with. Whereas I did have clients in the past where I felt like, oh shoot, I'm not sure if I should have said that way. Whereas like with you guys, like in Freedom Tribe, for example, like we just talk about whatever the F, it's like cool. And we're just so much more free together. And the reason why I can be so in love with my tribe is just that, over the years, I've just given myself a little bit more permission to do this, a little bit more permission to do that, and really released the idea that I had to be a certain way. And honestly, Derek, I'm still working on that. Like I'm still working on really boldly sharing what I have to say, which I know probably surprises a lot of people because people see me as being really outspoken and really bold and sharing my truth, which I do. And I do to a large extent. But the truth is, I know there's more. Like my version of me fully expressed is still not out in the world. So it's a constant growth experience for me. It's a constant trusting in my voice and trusting what I have to say. Because one of the things about becoming even a small public figure, it's like we're constantly opening ourselves up to criticism and judgment. And so that's still something where I have to coach myself into, or sometimes my friends have to coach me into this, that it's okay to share. It's okay to share the truth. So there's things that in the past I would have kept a secret because I was afraid of how it would land, or would I lose my credibility? What would my clients think? And I've just over time just gotten more comfortable with that. So it's definitely a process.
For someone that does get passionate about things but doesn't really share, do you have any suggestions for, okay, I want to do a Facebook Live video about something that really gets me fired up. How do I pick something, or how do I do the first one?
Yeah. Well, I would say something to look at is kind of what's the energy around it and what's the intention of sharing it. So if you're just angry, I'm not saying you, but anyone listening, if you're just angry and you just want to freaking vent, that might not be the best thing. I've definitely had, venti, angry rants, but there was an intention behind it. So that's the first thing I think it's really important to be clear on is, okay, so what is your intention of sharing this? Is this meant to provide value in some way? And I guess if someone feels called to just rant for the sake of ranting and to vent, I suppose that's okay. I personally want all of my messages to make a difference for someone, whether it's just that they literally laugh at me or they learn something from what I share. So I think that I would invite someone to just ask themselves, okay, what is their intention? What's a difference they'd like to make? And it could literally just be humor, or it could be just letting someone know they're not alone. I mean, sharing vulnerably about experiences we all have in our personal lives and in our businesses is so valuable for people who feel like they're alone when something's not working. So if that's the intention, that's great. But I would really just say, what's the intention behind the share? And then practicing pulling the entire idea through for the audience. So sometimes it connects in our brain, but that doesn't mean it's going to make sense to anybody else. So really thinking through, how am I going to connect this for the audience, make it clear for them, my desire in sharing. And I would just say, pick something, pick anything to start with and see how it goes. And the more practice I get with it, the more comfortable I feel, the less afraid I am. And like anything new, it takes time to get comfortable with it.
I noticed that this connecting the dots or pulling the idea through, that's something you talk about in your sales training as well. Taking, what we know about our work, business idea, whatever, and connecting the dots for people. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about that importance of connecting the dots.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. So this has been a really interesting thing that I noticed in this year's Sales Power program. So I know you know what that means, but for anyone, I teach a 6-week sales program called Sales Power, and every group that I coach is different. I'm always attracting different people. And the interesting thing about the tribe this year was that they really struggled to make a clear offer. And so when we got to the point in the program where we're doing sales role play, and of course they're all practicing with each other, when we got to that point in the program and people were laying out their programs to me, I was like, oh my God, these like literally don't make sense. And this means that your potential clients can't understand what you're selling. And so even if they would actually want it, they don't know because it's being communicated clearly. This is true even more so for spiritual folks who may use lingo or very heady intellectual science-oriented people. It's so important that you make sure that your language that you use is grounded, that it's clear, that it's specific. Because if people don't know what you're offering and assuming you're selling packages that are maybe several thousand, maybe tens of thousands of dollars, I mean, you really have to consider, would you feel safe spending that amount of money on something if you didn't know what it was? So it's so important that we connect the dots. And the other thing is, as coaches, consultants, healers, the reason why people are coming to us is because we know something that they don't. So I know something about business that my clients don't. And so I have to go into that conversation with that understanding that part of my job is literally to educate them. So I get people constantly who want to be a coach, but they don't know how to get clients, or they don't know how to create a high-end offer, or they don't know how to do sales. And so in that conversation, in a sales call, it's really my job to be able to connect the dots for people and have them understand what I'm offering and connect the dots for them in a way that they can understand. So in lingo that they understand about why doing my program, for example, will help them get clients, understand sales, and all of that.
And you also talk a lot about communicating the value. So when you're thinking about connecting the dots and communicating value and speaking in their language, how do you approach that?
Yeah. So again, when we're talking about selling high end, which is really my expertise, I don't get that excited about people making $100. I get excited about them making $10,000 or $20,000 or more. So yeah, in terms of connecting the dots for the value, again, think about it from the potential client perspective, from the buyer perspective. If they can't see the value of making that investment, then they really shouldn't invest. And so that's why it's so important that every time you're making an offer, you're connecting every bit of your program, everything that you're wanting them to invest in with you, you're connecting the dots between the pain point they have and the thing that they want. And you're really making it obvious, really making it clear that your program literally will solve their problem. Because if you don't do that, they won't see the value. Or if you connect it to the wrong thing, they're not going to see that it's for them. So just to give you an example, I was talking to a woman yesterday about her business, and she does this crazy transformational body work. It's really profound what she does. And, we were it was basically a coaching call. So she was practicing with me, and I was like, just pretend I'm the potential client. And, she started giving me a success story of someone who was a client of hers who was a body worker. And the success story that she shared was that, so it's basically two body workers, not to confuse everyone with the story, but the body worker who had received the body work from the woman I was coaching was then able to go do more body work and therefore make more money. So this was the success story she was sharing with me that was supposed to inspire me. And I was like, this doesn't actually connect for me. So it's great. I think it's great that you helped this woman go get more clients, but my work, other than typing away on a keyboard, is not physical work. And so, I would want to hear something more along the lines of, what if I could free something up in my energy that would allow me to attract higher end clients or something, right? That's a feasible result potentially from transformational, body work. Because I really believe that so much trauma, and all kinds of other stuff is stored in the body. And every time we clear more of our past out of our body, the more successful we become. And so what I shared with her to tie this all back together is that while her story was great, it didn't connect in with me. And so she was missing the mark with me on communicating that value. And so when we share a story, a success story, we also want to make sure that it connects in with the person specifically. So not just any old story, right? It's it has to be something that connects in with the potential client. And that's why sales is actually a nuanced skill, because it requires being just an incredible listener. It requires being amazing at making connections and connecting the dots for people in such a way that they can hear it. Because we think one way, but that doesn't mean that our potential clients think the way that we do. In fact, they probably don't. And so that's really our job, is to connect in with them, make it sound valuable for them. And so the offer sounds a little bit different for each person you talk to, or it should.
Yeah, I love that. And I appreciate more and more how nuanced it can be. I mean, everyone that you're talking to is different.
Right.
And it should be a very personal thing, especially because as coaches, we're going to be spending so much time with our clients anyway.
Right. Yeah. It's not like we're just selling some random thing like a cruise, it's like, yo, are you, if you're trusting me with your business, you're trusting me with your baby. And if I'm hiring you as my life coach, I'm trusting you with my deepest, darkest pains. So it is not a conversation that can be, surface level. That connection and connecting those dots is huge.
Do you have a sense for what's going to make someone a good client and what makes them a coachable client?
Oh, hell yes, I do. Yeah, definitely. So for me, and this is actually important too, and this is something I've been learning over the past couple of years, and I've really been bringing this into the way I'm doing enrollment for my 2018 mastermind group, is that, every coach has a bit of a different style. I am definitely kind of a, hey, here's the steps to follow, just do this will work, right? So even when I'm enrolling people right now into my program, I'm literally saying to them, hey, does my coaching style work for you? I'm very straightforward. I'm practical. I'm a loving ass kicker. This is not a sugarcoating program. This is a program where I'm going to be honest with you because I want you to get results. I am not enjoying coaching you if you're not making money. So I'm really having these transparent conversations now in a way that I didn't before, because I've been analyzing, Derek, who gets results with me and who doesn't. So I'll literally think about you, because you had a kick-ass year last year and hit your 6 figures, which is badass. And I look at you and I'm like, okay, what are the things about Derek that made him a good client? And then I, kind of look at who did really well in programs over the past few years. And for me, there's some really specific markers. So one is that the client has made money somehow, some way before they get to me. That, or they have a shit ton of chutzpah, because I was actually the client who had never done any coaching whatsoever when I hired my first business coach, and I was still one of the superstars, but I had a shit ton of chutzpah, and I had sold consulting work before. So I suppose that would have had me qualify for that. So they've made money before. They know they need a coach and they're willing to surrender to the coaching. So one of my clients, Christina, who just completely rocked my first mastermind, she was just incredible. She said, you know what? I do everything Emily tells me to do, even if I don't understand why she's asking me to do it. And it's just that level of attitude that's so important. It's no surprise that she rocked. And then I think she did like 96,000 after that. So she almost hit 6 figures. She did really well. But yeah, for me, I'm looking for someone who actually wants to be told what to do. And I don't mean in like a super bossy way. I mean, maybe you think I'm bossy, you could tell me, but someone who's just like, yeah, like I want to learn from you. You've walked this path longer than I have. You've created bigger results than I have. Like, yes, I'm willing to surrender. I do attract rebels, which I love. I do love a rebellious personality. And at the same time, there's a point where being a rebel becomes a problem, because if somebody is such a rebel that they're not willing to listen to what I have to say, or they're just wanting to like throw up a wall or be critical, because I always have like one person who will pull that at least in the mastermind every time. That doesn't work, right? So I'm also looking for a personality fit. And even beyond that, so not just a personality fit with me, but a personality fit for my tribe. So there's someone I spoke to recently who I was like, she really would do well in the Freedom Tribe, but I couldn't picture her hanging out with you guys, to be honest. Like, she was a little bit older, and just like, I just couldn't see her hanging out with you guys. And yeah, so I was just like, it's okay if she joins, I guess, but I'm not really going to like, not push isn't the right word, but I'm not really going to like overly encourage her to be a part of the community, because I also get that one of the best things I could ever do for my business is have you guys get really good results. And part of how you get really good results is by us keeping a super tight ship in a really kick-ass container.
Yeah, I remember something about also in terms of tight ship, the expectations or the standard that you hold your team to, and that it can be an adjustment for them as they come on. How does that work, holding people to a higher standard without just being a jerk. I mean, we all want to have
Yeah,
high expectations.
sure.
Yeah. How do you manage that?
Oh, God, that's such a good question, Derek. Yeah. So this has been a huge growing point for me. In fact, I guess you could call him a life coach. I don't even really like the term life coach, but my personal coach, life coach, whatever you want to call him, John and I, we talk about this a lot. By the way, it's not the John you might be thinking of, it's somebody else. So yeah, it's like one of the things that I'm still practicing is how can I share feedback with my team to let them know that certain types of mistakes are unacceptable, because some mistakes have a huge impact on my business and on my clients. So, there's different levels. Like maybe if you picture like a ladder or a pyramid or something, but there's different levels of mistakes, right? There's like the little dinky ones where it's like, you didn't confirm this call, but it's not that big of a deal. Whereas if a call gets rescheduled and I never get told about it, or it's in my calendar literally at the wrong time, like that's not cool. Mistakes that cost money, like those are obviously a big problem. Mistakes that compromise safety, for example. I mean, there's so many different things, right? So for me, what I am still practicing is how do I communicate about the importance of certain things in my company? And one of the things that's been really cool with Marin, who's new on my team, is that, one of the things she shared with me is that I'm asking so much more of her than anyone has ever asked before. So she's been a VA for other people. They basically, according to her, didn't really have their shit together in their business. And so they're just, she could like be task oriented, but there weren't any higher level conversations happening. And so her working with me has caused her to actually have to think and act differently to kind of rise up to my standards, which are different, which is a, relatively successful business with many clients and a lot going on. So yeah, I don't necessarily have a super clear answer for this, but I think, and something else though that I've learned from John, and this is the reason why I brought him up, my coach, is that one of the things that I had to accept is that entrepreneurs, we actually think differently. And one of the things that used to really frustrate me, and honestly it still does sometimes, is that I just can constantly think of the details and the different scenarios, and not a lot gets by me. Like when something needs to happen, I know the 10 other things connected to making that thing happen. Whereas my team doesn't tend to think like that. So something that is obvious as fuck to me is not obvious to my team. And so I have to be more patient and realize that that's something that I can teach, but it's not something that I can expect because my brain works differently. The other thing is I'm very quick, and I expect that same level of like, it's almost like brain speed or connecting the dots from my team, rather than realizing that I need to teach them how to be like that. But it's definitely come up, like once in a while it'll come up with Heather on my team where we just laugh because we'll both be 100% sure that it was so clear, and she sees blue when I'm seeing green, and I'm like, we're literally talking different languages and we can't understand why the other person cannot see our perspective. We're just literally ships passing in the night, and it doesn't happen that often. And when it does, we just kind of laugh about it. Like, okay, we're having one of those moments. Cause I'm like, how could that not be beyond fucking obvious? But she's like, well, no, I mean, why, how could that have occurred to me? So that's where I have to realize it all comes back to me as the leader. And, even with Marin, something that we started doing recently, I mean, even today we had a meeting this morning, when we're about to hang up, I'm like, okay, what are your priorities? Because half the time she thinks something is important or is more important that isn't. And so then we kind of got to like rejigger what she puts her time into first. So something that I've really been learning over the past couple of years, I've been investing in a shit ton of personal development, is that if I just take responsibility for everything happening in my company, it's a lot better. And what that means is that if my team fucks up, it's my fault. And then I have to be the one to clean it up, to change my leadership style, to change my communication style. And it just gives me more power to know that, I can't just complain about my team. I have to actually be the one to really communicate what I need, or if they're really not up for the job, to let them go. And I think in the past I've tried to like make somebody who wasn't the right fit, make them the right fit because I liked them.
Yes.
And that just doesn't work. So it's really a both and of like, okay, I need to like chill the fuck out because I'm a control freak and that's why I do great in my business, but it doesn't work in every area of my life. So yeah, it's like looking at every scenario that happens and asking myself, okay, which part of this really was on me and which part of this do I really need my team to step up and really clearly communicate that with them? Such a good question.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm just curious, how frequently are you doing calls or emailing, connecting with each person on your team?
I would say we're like texting or voxering like multiple times a day usually. And then I have a weekly meeting with Marin and a weekly meeting with Heather. And then I have a weekly meeting with my coaching team.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. All right. That's good to know. As someone who's building a team. Going back to the rebels that you attract,
Mm-hmm.
how if someone has rebellious tendencies, how do you, let's say, how do you ignore or get past those tendencies if it's getting in the way of your ability to learn or be coached?
Yeah. Oh God, it's such a good question. Okay. So you're talking about when my clients are getting rebellious?
Like for someone that knows they're rebellious,
Mm-hmm.
simply being aware of that is probably good. But what do they do knowing they're a rebel?
Okay. So are we talking about me or my clients or both?
Your clients.
Okay, cool. So yeah, this is something also that I've had to grow into because sometimes it can create some pretty awkward moments. If someone is really putting up a wall, being defensive, being critical of me, kind of shit talking my strategy, for example, that can happen once in a while. Or I'll get like private messages from a client, kind of like putting up a little bit of an adult temper tantrum. So something that I have had to learn over the years is that, again, it falls on me. This is the leadership. So if my group, for example, starts to go sideways, that's when I need to come in and like clean things up and speak directly into the elephant in the room. So that used to scare the shit out of me. And, running big group programs, there's always some feedback around the behavior that has to happen at some point. I would say as you get with like higher level entrepreneurs, that doesn't really happen, but both as a client in groups and as a coach in groups, I've seen it. And there's just like less and less tolerance for that as people grow. So like the mastermind that I'm in now, it's like that person would literally be kicked out. But it's just something that I've had to practice speaking into, coaching into, and also even letting people know at the beginning of the year, like, hey, at some point this year, you're probably going to get triggered by me. You're probably going to be angry with me. And, I need you to keep going and know that that's part of the process. And we have a behavior expectation in this group, which is you don't get to be a victim-y complainer, and it doesn't mean you don't get to have a hard time, or if there's something that I've done and I really need to hear some feedback, that's allowed. But again, it comes down to leadership. And the more that I've really just cultivated that style of community, I just don't really have the same challenges that I used to have. And so much of that is me growing my confidence and holding that space.
Yeah, and it sounds like a lot of these things, going back to you sharing and just being yourself more, that this has just been a progression for you over time. So maybe you could talk a little bit about your business progression and your sort of personal progression as a coach.
Yeah. I was saying this recently, I don't remember where, but the more I grow my business, the more support I need. And I don't mean admin support. That's obvious, right? But the more personal support I need. And it's never what I would have expected. I would have expected, oh, I'm going to get stronger. I'm going to get more confident, and I'm not going to really need that much help. It's actually the opposite, which is so weird. But looking back to the early days, I mean, I barely knew what I was doing. I barely knew what to do on a coaching call. I was really kind of making things up on the fly. I was not super confident in sales. My first group program actually was pretty awesome. Like, people got results, not nearly like they got last year and will get this year, but people did get results. I mean, I had a person do multi six figures the first year in my mastermind, which was pretty badass. So, You know what's a great place for me to get reflection is actually from my coaching team. And so this is a reflection I've gotten a lot from my coaching team, because sometimes we can't see our own growth. We have to hear that feedback from other people. But what my team has shared with me, and I feel this too, obviously, I mean, I know that a lot of this is there, but what they reflected to me was just, seeing how I shifted in my coaching abilities, the way that I shifted in being able to hold a really responsible community and not let things like trigger the shit out of me when a client would confront me, for example. And for me, I will say for sure that one of the most valuable investments I've ever made, more so my time and energy than my money, even though it was money, it just wasn't a lot, was really the personal development work that I dove into really head first. So I've always been doing personal development work for most of my life, but I really made it a priority. And that is what has allowed me to stand the way that I can now. And even with just the recent Sales Power program, I just got insane feedback from people in the group about how I held that space and how I coached people, because it was so honest, but it wasn't in a way that had anyone feel shamed or made wrong or that I was frustrated, which, to be honest with you, was like one of my things that I had to grow out of, because in the past, the way that I would land a lot of my feedback was, oh, she's frustrated, she's angry, I feel shamed, I feel made wrong. And so I really had to learn, because nothing I said was ever quote unquote wrong, meaning the client was actually doing the thing or sabotaging in the way that I was seeing. The problem was I hadn't figured out a way to communicate it in a way that they could hear it. So honestly, I feel like that's been one of the biggest parts for me that's had me grow as a coach, is that personal work that allowed me to learn more and more and more and more about how I can more consistently land my feedback, because I am under no illusion that my coaching is going to be spot on 100% of the time. I think that nobody should hold themselves to that impossible standard, but it's landing more and more and more. And that's why I'm seeing the results of my clients get better and better.
It's so subtle, the difference, but from my experience can take so much focus on our part to pay attention to each of these little shifts to make, that I think that it probably does take both a lot of time and a lot of focus and good help from other coaches and trainers to help us do that. So the difference
Exactly.
is, and the results are huge, but the difference is like sometimes very small little tweaks in the things we're saying or how we're showing up. So it's like the difference between an Olympian and just a good athlete.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And I mean, Sales Power, because it's so fresh, because we just wrapped that program, is the best example of this, because I really believe that the reason that I'm such a good sales trainer is because I can see what's going on with people that's connected with their personal development. So I can see where they're holding back. I can see where they're playing small. I can see where they're getting self-conscious. And it's actually my coaching on those things rather than the perfect way to handle an objection. It's literally like the stuff that's going on in them in the sales station. And when I can coach into that, that's when they get results. Because there's a million different ways you could sell, right? Like I have just one way, but the reason why I'm good at it and why my clients get results is because I can see, like, even it's like, okay, Derek, you keep doing the same damn thing. What's up with that? And I used to be afraid to say things like that because I didn't want to hurt my clients' feelings. I didn't want to seem like a bitch. I was just afraid, honestly. I was just afraid to say the truth. And now I'm not afraid to say the truth. And in fact, I think that's why people are paying me, is because they want to hear the truth. Even if it's hard to hear, they do want to hear it because they want the result. And they're not just trying to like pad my bank account, which of course I appreciate, but they want to pad their own bank account.
And there's some coaching that I got from you actually about how, look at what is going on for you that's showing up in your business. And for me, it was going 95% of the way there and not like closing the last little gap. And I'm just curious how you think about these sort of things that are going on personally and how they show up in our business, or how you identify what might be going on personally for someone?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm a 90%er, so it's hilarious. I was telling some friends this the other day. I will literally, Derek, I will do 90% of the dishes. It's fucking stupid. Like, why would I just do 90% of the dishes? Or I hate putting away laundry. I hate putting away clean things. Like I hate emptying the dishwasher. I hate putting away clean laundry. I just will let it sit forever. And then when I finally do go to take care of it, I'll do 90%. Like I'll leave two things in the laundry basket. Like literally makes no sense. With the dishes, it's like, oh, I'll get like bored of it and think, oh, I'll come back and get these last two things later. And I just notice it's like, okay, well, where am I doing 90% in my business? Like, you know, I got all the way through the webinar prep except for this one thing, like how the slides are going to work or which software we're going to use or something like that. It's just ridiculous. So, or even avoidance, like sometimes when I don't want to look at something, I go into avoidance. And, you know, that's another thing that I've had to grow awareness around. Like, you know, if there's like a problem and I don't want to deal with the problem, it's like so easy to avoid it. Or if there's fear around something, it's so easy to avoid it. And so like I am constantly building my awareness around my avoidance patterns.
Brilliant. Awareness around avoidance patterns.
Yeah.
That's again, I mean, just, you know, thinking about that for a second, it takes some effort to actually look at ourselves in a way to identify these patterns. I'm curious, how many coaches do you have? What does your personal development structure look like right now?
Yeah. So right now I have 3. They're all men, which this has never happened before. So I have a business coach, my lifey / whatever you want to call him coach. That's one person. And then the third is my healer, actually. Although he really does do a lot of coaching with me. So it's not like I'm laying on the table and he's like, you know, pouring crystals on my face. We're talking, we're doing some different modalities. But we do, you know, a lot of the work actually happens in conversation with him reflecting things back to me. So he's pretty amazing. Sometimes I have more than that. I would say I've probably maxed out at like 4 or 5 mentors at a time. You know, when I was doing AOA and then their graduate level program called PhD, like that was a whole other trainer that I was working with. So I've finally completed all those programs now. So 3 feels actually light for me. I'm used to having more.
Okay. That's a good reference point.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of questions that came in from people that know you from our audience.
I'm like, uh-oh, where are we going with this now?
Well, you've talked publicly in the past about you know, using your analogy of wanting to find a romantic partner and using a dating coach.
Yeah.
For, you know, just the need for having coaching around something that's important to you.
Yeah.
And just wanted to ask you if you approach your relationships, you know, getting coaching on that systematically the same way you approach learning about business from your business coach.
Yeah. So I've worked with a couple of different like specific kind of like dating love coaches. Some of the work that I do with Andrew, who's my healer, is actually on romantic relationships. So we do a modality that's actually intended to support me with healing my attachment style. So I don't know if you're familiar with attachment styles, but you know, depending on how we grew up, we, you know, and what we experience in our families, we have different attachment styles. So the 3 main attachment styles are secure, anxious, and avoidant. It's funny that we're talking about avoidance again. So I have kind of a mix of like the anxious and avoidant attachment style, which means what I've tended to attract in the past is like unavailable men are like my favorite. So that's a lot of the work that I'm doing with Andrew. So I would say I'm not always, and I'm so glad you're asking this because it's just such a nice way to kind of call me out, because I haven't been consistent with having support for my romantic part of my life, the non-existent romantic part of my life. That hasn't been consistent. Whereas I've literally never not had a business coach. I've had a business coach every single day since I became a coach. But yeah, the love thing, like, I mean, definitely the work that I've done, the personal development work all connects. And I've worked with multiple NLP practitioners. And so John, and then a former NLP person I worked with named Zach, like that was a big part of why I hired both of them. But it's just interesting for me to even think about it right now. Like, okay, but there have been gaps. So even though I've had support, there have been gaps in that area, whereas there haven't been gaps in business. So to answer your question, no, I guess I don't fully approach it the same way, although I do get support for it. But it's a really good question to look at of like, yeah, like how committed are we? Like, are we actually committed to this thing? And if so, how are we showing up to, like, not to prove, that's not the right word, but I can't think of a better word. Like, how do we demonstrate that level of commitment?
Yes. Okay, we got another question from the audience, which is your business is pointed at adventurous entrepreneurs and is all about creating freedom. And I know that's really important to you to be able to travel and have a flexible schedule. So what is your work effort like time-wise, and sort of how long are your moments of intense work effort, and how do you sort of take breaks after that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it definitely fluctuates. It's kind of hard to give you an answer. So like this time of year, I'll definitely take a sales call on a weekend. Part of the problem, I was actually talking to Marin about this today, is I really need to hire a salesperson. And since I don't have one right now, it's like all the sales calls fall on me. So that's something that will change, and that's going to free up a ton of my time. But like this time of year, for example, because I'm filling the mastermind, I'm definitely doing more calls than usual. There's big chunks of the year where I'm hardly doing anything. It's like, I'm running the client calls and I'm going in the Facebook group, but even like most of that doesn't really feel like work for me. I mean, obviously it's like on my schedule and I have to do it. So in that sense, it's not like, oh, I'm just free all day. But I would say right now, like even like a really heavy work week for me is still, it wouldn't be like much more than like 40 hours, I would say. And then a light week would be like 2 or 3 hours probably. Up in my business is actually to support me wanting to, because my programs have like a specific, well, my mastermind Freedom Tribe is changing, but because my mastermind has a start date, there's really only a specific enrollment period, which means there's a lot more happening to like get leads for that program. Same was true for Sales Power. Whereas like Freedom Tribe, because it's rolling, people can kind of come in at any time. It shifts a little bit when the quote unquote like push times would be, or the more hustly type times. But yeah, I would say it fluctuates. Like the busiest week will be me literally not having like a full day off because I'm doing like a couple calls or I'm brainstorming, mapping out a program or something like that. But I would say there's a good, I don't know, I'd have to like look at my calendar to really see, but there's probably like a good 3-4 months of the year that I'm not doing much.
That sounds real nice.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I'm still working to make that even better because like, on the topic of travel, I had to have this real talk with myself where I realized I'm still sacrificing travel. So even though I do travel, I would actually like to be traveling more. And I love that I have people like you in my community because I'm like, what the fuck? Like Derek's in Bali. Why am I not in Bali? And of course I have a trip planned in May, but it's like, well, how come I haven't been to Tulum for a week when I've been thinking about it? So I do little things, like little trips here and there, LA, Palm Springs, Colorado. Sometimes I forget all the places I've been, but I haven't been on a big international trip in a few months. So at least a few months, November. So that's still something that I'm figuring out. And that's like, I think this is so important for people to look at their business model and ask yourself, have you set up a business model that will actually give you the lifestyle that you want? Because if you're not doing that, it's so easy to resent the business. And so for me, that's been a big priority, is looking at, okay, over time, how do I shift my business model so that, I do have more support. So I have a sales team. So, I have more rolling programs rather than like these like strict start dates where I'm having to like bust my ass before they start. So it's a really important question to ask. And I feel like I also pay our dues a little bit so that we get good at what we're doing. We can build a reputation. We build up testimonials, results, and all of that. And then we have more freedom to just like shift things up. So that's my experience right now, at least.
Brilliant. Yeah, I love that. I was just writing about that in Superconductors, about designing your business to suit your desires. Yeah.
Yes, it's so important because like, hello, this is why we did this thing, at least for me.
Yeah. Emily, is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you think is important for the audience to know?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, we could talk for hours, right? There's a million different things we could talk about. So I would say, I mean, we kind of like touched on this, but just to make it like really obvious for people, I would love to just speak for a moment about the importance of actually hiring a mentor if you plan on ever being serious in your business.
Please.
Okay. Well, so you're such a great example of this, Derek, of just like realizing that there was something that you didn't know, and that once you had just even a little bit more information, your business shifted dramatically. And I know that that's exactly what you're creating with your own clients. Is you have people coming to you that they know they want something, but they don't know exactly how to do it. And that's exactly what you're offering them is, the support, the strategies, the skill set to actually go out and do something. And one of the things that is so hard for me to witness, and I see it every single day with so many different people, is this idea that somehow you're just going to like figure it out magically and have a successful business. And it is just not true. For anyone listening who hasn't yet invested in a coach, like reach out to Derek, reach out to somebody who you vibe with, because there's so much time and energy wasted in doing the wrong things and expending energy in the wrong places. And there's just so many qualified, great people out there who could help you have more of what you want and a lot faster. And the fact that, for anyone who's not creating the results they want right now, there's nothing wrong with you. You literally just have a gap in your skill set. And when you can actually fill that, things can change and shift so quickly. So I just can't be more of an advocate for support. I mean, like I'm saying 3 mentors right now is light. I just can't advocate for that enough. And we all are gifted with whatever it is that we're gifted with. And we can create so much transformation for other people or businesses or the planet or whatever it is. And if you're the type of person who wants to go out there and create results for other people, you should also be the type of person who's willing to invest in your own transformation. And truly everything that I have invested in for my business, all of the personal growth, all of the mentors, is exactly why I'm able to be running a business that's actually working. So yeah, just a little shout out for just get a damn coach if you don't have one right now.
Yeah, and it's an exponential growth thing. So once you handle and learn the gaps in your skills at one level, right, it lets you get to the next level faster, and you can hire support for that level. And it's just, it's
exactly
compound investing, and it just accelerates the whole thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Love it. Emily, thank you so much for coming on the show. Where is the best place for people to find you online?
Thank you so much, Derek. Thanks for having me back. This was awesome. And it was so fun to get to talk now that we know each other better and we've had all this experience together. The best way to find me is just on my website, emilyutter.com. And that's with T's.
Emily Utter, Utter. Utter.
Well, 2 T's. Utter,
yes. Yeah. Yeah, and Emily, I just want to acknowledge you and thank you for the role that you've had in helping my business grow, and so many, probably hundreds or thousands of people that you've helped make money, that you've helped grow their business and have more freedom. I'm really glad that you're the one coaching all these people. So thank you for the work you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much, Derek. It's truly my honor. And, especially somebody like you who's up to really big things in the world. This because you coach amazing people too. It's just such a gift to be able to support somebody in reaching more people, making a bigger difference, making more money, having more fun, all of that. So you're really easy to coach. And that's why you've gotten the results you've gotten. Like 90% you, 10% me. So you rock.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks again for coming on the
Yeah.
show, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Ciao.
Bye, Emily. All right, such an amazing episode with Emily Utter. If you learned something from that episode, let us know. Send Emily an email, send me an email, give her a shout out on Twitter or Instagram, because there was some really good stuff. And I want to know what you learned. And if you go out and try some of the things she's suggesting in her business, if you go and connect the dots for people, if you do a rant on Facebook and people respond really well, I want to hear how that's going for you. And hopefully you're super inspired, because Emily is very transparent about how she's done a lot of work and come a long way. And she's really good at what she does now, but she didn't used to be as good. And it's a progressive mastery situation, and she's still getting better. Really appreciate you listening to the show. If you haven't subscribed in iTunes or left us a rating and review, we would love you forever if you would do that. It helps keep the show up in the rankings and helps us get feedback about what you like. So it'll only take a few minutes. Love for you to do that. And thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Art of Adventure. Now it's your turn to go out there and be adventurous.